I never thought I'd be the one to sign his paychecks. The same hands he once said were wasting time on a hobby now authorize his direct deposits. Life has a way of coming full circle, doesn't it? My name is Claire, and 5 years ago, I was just another marketing executive trying to climb the corporate ladder while nurturing a little side project after hours. Today, I'm the CEO of Prism Digital, a marketing agency with 40 employees and a portfolio of Fortune 500 clients. And somewhere in the middle of our org chart sits Daniel, my ex-husband and former biggest critic. This isn't a revenge story. At least it didn't start that way. But sometimes the universe has a sense of humor that even I couldn't have scripted. The rain against our bedroom window that night provided the perfect soundtrack for what was about to become the beginning of the end. Daniel lounged on our bed scrolling through his phone while I hunched over my laptop, putting final touches on a website I was designing for a small local business. "It's almost midnight, Claire. Are you seriously still working on that thing?" Daniel didn't look up from his phone. "Just finishing the contact page. The client needs it by tomorrow." I rubbed my eyes, already feeling the strain of another late night. "I don't understand why you waste your time with these little projects. What did they pay you for this one? A few $100s?" His voice carried that familiar condescending tone that had been creeping into our conversations more frequently. 800. And it's not about the money right now. I'm building a portfolio." Daniel scoffed. "A portfolio, right. Meanwhile, you're exhausted for your actual job. The one with benefits and a real salary?" I saved my work and closed my laptop. We'd had this conversation too many times to count. My side hustle, designing websites and running small marketing campaigns for local businesses, had become a point of contention in our 4-year marriage. My actual job is fine. I still deliver results. I slipped under the covers, turning away from him. "Look, I'm just saying, if you put half the energy you waste on these little projects into your career at Maxwell and Webb, you could be up for a director position by now." The irony wasn't lost on me. Daniel worked in the same marketing firm but had been passed over for promotion twice already, something I tactfully avoided mentioning. I like my side projects. They let me be creative in ways Maxwell and Webb doesn't. I kept my voice neutral, unwilling to escalate. "Creative, right?" I could hear his eye roll without seeing it. "While you're being creative, I'm networking with people who can actually advance our careers, like tonight's dinner with the Harrisons that you were too busy to attend." I bit my tongue. Daniel's networking had increasingly involved expensive dinners, bar tabs that made our credit card statement painful to review, and late nights that smelled of whiskey and someone else's perfume when he finally came home. But that night, I didn't have the energy to fight. My small business clients might only pay a few $100s per project, but each one represented a step towards something that felt increasingly like an escape route. Little did I know how soon I'd need it. 3 months later, I sat in our kitchen staring at our bank statement, my coffee growing cold beside me. The numbers didn't add up, literally. Our joint savings account showed withdrawals totaling almost $15,000 over the past 2 months. Money that was supposed to be for our future, for the down payment on a house we'd been discussing. The front door opened, and Daniel walked in wearing the custom suit he'd insisted he needed for client impressions. The same client whose name appeared on hotel receipts I'd found in his jacket pocket last week. "We need to talk about the savings account," I said, sliding the statement toward him as he dropped his keys on the counter. "What about it?" He barely glanced at the paper, heading straight for the refrigerator. $15,000, Daniel. Where is it?" He pulled out a beer, taking his time opening it before answering. "I had some investments to make. Business opportunities." "What business opportunities require emptying our savings without discussing it with me first?" He leaned against the counter, finally meeting my eyes with a look of superiority that made my stomach clench. "Look, you wouldn't understand. It's high-level networking. Relationships that will pay off big time when I land the Collins account." "The Collins account? Daniel, that's been almost yours for over a year now?" His expression hardened. "At least I'm going after real clients, not wasting my nights on 2-bit local businesses that barely keep the lights on." "My 2-bit side hustle has made almost $30,000 this year." I shot back, immediately regretting revealing the number I'd kept private. Daniel's eyebrows shot up. 30,000? Where is it then? In my separate account for my business expenses. And as an increasingly necessary safety net, I didn't add your separate account. His voice dropped dangerously. So you've been hiding money while questioning me about our joint savings? I haven't been hiding anything. I've been transparent about my freelance work from day one. You're the one making mystery withdrawals. Daniel set his beer down with more force than necessary. Those mystery withdrawals are investments in our future. I'm this close to landing Collins, and when I do, we're talking a six-figure bonus. And how much of our savings has this almost deal cost so far? He stepped closer, towering over me. You know what your problem is, Claire? You think small. Your little websites, your little local clients. You're so busy playing entrepreneur in our spare bedroom that you can't see the bigger picture. And what exactly is the bigger picture, Daniel? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks a lot like our savings disappearing while you chase a client who's never going to sign. The argument escalated from there, words like grenades lobbed across our once happy kitchen. When the dust settled, Daniel stormed out, and I was left alone with the realization that our marriage had been running on fumes for longer than I wanted to admit. That night, I didn't work on client projects. Instead, I created a spreadsheet tracking every unusual expense, every late-night networking event, every withdrawal from our joint account. The picture it painted wasn't pretty, but it was necessary clarity. The next morning, I opened a new bank account in my name only and transferred my side hustle earnings into it. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. As I would soon discover, my instincts were right on the money. 2 weeks later, I came home early from work with a migraine to find Daniel hurriedly packing a suitcase. The surprise on his face quickly morphed into resignation. You weren't supposed to be home yet, he said, continuing to fold a shirt with mechanical precision. Clearly. I set my purse down, a strange calm washing over me. Going somewhere? He sighed, a sound more annoyed than remorseful. I was going to tell you tonight. I've accepted a position with Collins directly. Senior Marketing Director. The job title he'd coveted for years at our firm. The client he'd been this close to landing for months. Congratulations, and I said the word hollow. When did this happen? They approached me last month. I've been in negotiations. He avoided my eyes, focusing intently on his packing. Last month, when our savings started disappearing. And you're leaving today? He zipped the suitcase closed with finality. My flight's in 3 hours. I'll be relocated to Chicago by tonight. Chicago? The word felt foreign on my tongue. And when were you planning to discuss this major life decision with your wife? Daniel finally looked at me, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. I'm doing this for us, Claire. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for. Once I'm settled, you can join me. Join you? I repeated his words, testing their weight. Abandon my clients, my projects, everything I've built here to follow you to Chicago for a job you accepted without even telling me it was on the table? Your clients are small-time local businesses. You can find plenty of those in Chicago. He checked his watch. Look, we can talk about the details later. I need to get to the airport. Does Rachel know you're leaving? The name hung in the air between us. Rachel, the junior account executive at our firm who always seemed to need Daniel's late-night mentoring sessions, his momentary freeze was all the confirmation I needed. She starts next week, he finally said, as my assistant. Of course she did. Take your things and go, Daniel. My voice remained eerily calm, surprising even myself. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the rest. He had the audacity to look wounded. Don't be dramatic, Claire. This is a career opportunity. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made. You've certainly made yours. I walked to our bedroom door. I suggest you hurry. Wouldn't want to miss your flight. After he left, I didn't cry. Instead, I sat at my desk in our spare bedroom, my office, and looked at the wall of client testimonials I'd pinned up for motivation. Small local businesses that had seen real growth from my work, the hobby that had kept me sane while my marriage crumbled. I opened my laptop and created a new document. Prism Digital Marketing Agency, Business plan. Sometimes endings are just disguised beginnings. The divorce was quick, but not painless. Daniel had taken more than just his clothes to Chicago. Our joint savings was completely emptied. He claimed it was for relocation expenses. My lawyer called it financial misconduct. The judge agreed with my lawyer. What Daniel didn't know was that my little side hustle had been generating enough income to support me entirely for the past year. I'd kept working at Maxwell and Webb, partly out of convenience, and partly because I hadn't been ready to admit to myself that my side gig had become my true passion. Within a month of Daniel's departure, I handed in my resignation and rented a small office space downtown. Prism Digital Marketing Agency was officially born. My first move was to reach out to every client I'd ever worked with, offering expanded services beyond just website design. Social media management, content creation, digital marketing strategies, skills I'd honed at Maxwell and Webb but could now implement with the personal touch that made my side hustle successful. 8 out of 10 signed on. 3 referred friends. By month 3, I had hired my first employee, a graphic designer who shared my vision for helping small businesses compete in the digital space. "You're undercharging," Emma, my new designer, pointed out one evening as we worked late. These strategies would cost triple at a bigger agency. That's the point, I explained. Small businesses can't afford the big agencies, but they deserve the same quality. We grow as they grow. It was a philosophy born from my own experience, being underestimated, overlooked. I knew what it was like to have potential that others dismissed as insignificant. By the end of the first year, Prism had 8 employees and a waiting list of clients. We'd moved to a larger office, and I'd been featured in the local business journal as an entrepreneur to watch. The article never mentioned that just 12 months earlier, I'd been dismissed as wasting my time on a hobby. I thought about Daniel occasionally, wondering if he'd seen my success. Chicago wasn't that far away, and the marketing world could be surprisingly small, but I was too busy building something meaningful to dwell on the past until the past came calling. It was a Tuesday afternoon, almost 2 years after Daniel had walked out with his suitcase, when his name appeared in my email inbox. Request for meeting, Daniel Morgan. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. The email was brief, professional, almost sterile. "Claire, I'll be in town next week and would appreciate the opportunity to meet. Professional matter to discuss. Coffee, perhaps?" Daniel. No explanation, no pleasantries. Typical Daniel. I considered ignoring it, but something, perhaps the sheer audacity, made me respond with a time and place. A coffee shop down the street from my office. Public, brief, safe. When I arrived, he was already there, looking both familiar and foreign. The designer suit was gone, replaced by business casual that seemed slightly too large for his frame. His confidence, once bordering on arrogance, had a brittle quality to it now. "Claire?" He stood as I approached. "Thank you for meeting me." "Daniel." I sat across from him, keeping my expression neutral. "What brings you back to town?" He cleared his throat. "I saw the feature on Prism in Marketing Monthly. Impressive growth." "Thank you." I didn't elaborate, curious where he was going with this. "The Collins position didn't work out as expected." The admission seemed physically painful for him. The company went through a restructuring 6 months ago. My department was eliminated. "I'm sorry to hear that." And surprisingly, I was. Despite everything, I had never wished failure on him. "Rachel left for New York. A better opportunity," she said. A humorless smile crossed his face. "Seems to be a pattern." I sipped my coffee, waiting. Daniel hadn't arranged this meeting to update me on his personal life. "I've been consulting," he continued, "but Chicago's market is saturated. I'm moving back here next month." "And you're telling me this because—" He straightened in his chair, switching to what I recognized as his interview posture. "Because I'd like to talk to you about joining Prism, as a consultant or account manager. Whatever position you might have available." My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. Of all the scenarios I'd imagined for this meeting, This hadn't even made the list. You want to work? For me? With you, he corrected automatically, then caught himself. For you. Yes. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The man who had dismissed my work as a hobby now wanted to be part of the company it had become. Why Prism? I asked. There are other agencies in town. Because you're doing something different. The small business focus, the growth strategies that scale with client success, it's innovative. He leaned forward. And because I owe you an apology, Claire, I was wrong about your vision. I studied him, looking for the manipulation, the angle. But all I saw was someone humbled by circumstance, offering what might be the first genuine apology I'd ever heard from him. Send me your resume, I finally said, gathering my things. I'll consider it like any other application. Relief washed over his face. Thank you, that's more than fair. As I stood to leave, he asked, how did you do it? Build all this so quickly? I thought about the late nights, the risks, the moments of doubt. But most of all, I thought about the fuel that had propelled me forward when things got tough. The echo of his dismissive words about my little projects. I didn't waste my time, I said simply, and walked out. Daniel's resume arrived in my inbox that evening. Objectively, he was qualified. Despite our personal history, he had solid experience with larger clients that could benefit Prism as we expanded. But could I really work with my ex-husband, the man who had belittled my dreams before abandoning our marriage? I brought it up during my weekly dinner with Zoe, my CFO and closest friend at Prism. You're not seriously considering this? Zoe's fork clattered against her plate. After everything he did? I'm considering what's best for the company, I said, though the uncertainty in my voice betrayed me. The company you built while he was telling you it was a waste of time, she reminded me. The company that succeeded because you didn't listen to him? She wasn't wrong, but something about the symmetry of it appealed to me. Not as revenge, but as closure. As proof that I had moved beyond the pain to a place where I could make decisions based on business merit, not emotional history. He has connections with larger clients we've been trying to reach, I pointed out. Experience we could use as we scale. Zoe studied me. This isn't about his resume, is it? I sighed. Part of me wants him to see what I've built, up close, to really understand what he dismissed. And the other part? The other part wants to prove, to myself more than to him, that I'm not defined by what happened between us, that I can make decisions as a CEO, not as an ex-wife. Zoe reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Just promise me you'll protect yourself. And the company. I nodded, already formulating the terms under which I might hire Daniel. Terms that would protect everything I'd built, while allowing me to finally close a chapter that had driven me harder than I cared to admit. 3 days later, I invited Daniel to a formal interview at the Prism office. Watching him walk into the space I'd created, modern, professional, thriving with the energy of 20 employees, gave me a satisfaction I hadn't anticipated. This is impressive, he said, looking around at the awards displayed in our reception area. Several were for campaigns we'd done for those 2-bit local businesses he'd once dismissed. Thank you. I led him to my office, aware of the curious glances from my team who knew enough about my history to be surprised by his presence. The interview was surprisingly professional. I asked about his experience with the Collins account, what he'd learned from the company's restructuring, his approach to client retention. He answered thoughtfully with less of the bravado I remembered. One last question, I said as the interview concluded. Why should I hire someone who once told me my business vision was a waste of time? To his credit, he didn't flinch. Because I was wrong, demonstrably, undeniably wrong. And because sometimes the people who learn from their mistakes become your strongest advocates. I considered his words, tapping my pen against my desk. If, and this is a big if, I offered you a position, it would be probationary. 6 months. Reporting directly to me. Starting salary comparable to entry level for your experience, with performance-based increases possible after the probationary period. He nodded, accepting terms that were significantly less than what he would have commanded before his fall from Collins. I understand. And Daniel? If this is about trying to get back together, or if you have any notion that you'll eventually take over or outrank me, it's not, he interrupted. This is purely professional. You've built something remarkable here. I'd be fortunate to be part of it. 1 week later, Daniel Morgan joined Prism Digital as a senior account consultant on probation. The announcement raised eyebrows among those who knew our history, but I made it clear that his hiring was a business decision based on qualifications and potential value to our clients. Only Zoe knew the truth, that I was finally putting the past to rest by bringing it right into my present, on my terms. Daniel's first month at Prism was a study in contrasts. The confidence that had once bordered on arrogance was tempered now, replaced by a careful humility that seemed almost foreign on him. He arrived early, stayed late, and approached each assignment with a dedication I had rarely seen during our marriage. The Westfield proposal is ready for your review, he said, placing a folder on my desk one evening as most of the staff was heading home. Thank you. I glanced at the clock. 7:30 p.m. You should go home too. Get some rest. Just want to make sure everything's perfect. He hesitated at the door. This is important. Westfield was our largest potential client yet, a regional chain looking to expand their digital presence. Landing them would push Prism into a new tier of agencies. We'll review it together in the morning, I said, a small olive branch. Fresh eyes. He nodded gratefully and left. After he was gone, I opened the folder and began reading. The proposal was good, better than good. Daniel had incorporated our small business approach while scaling it appropriately for a larger client. He'd understood Prism's philosophy and applied it with precision. The next morning, reviewing the proposal together, I found myself in the surreal position of brainstorming with the man who had once dismissed this entire business as a hobby. If we emphasize their community roots while expanding their digital reach, we maintain their brand identity through the growth, Daniel suggested, animated in a way I remembered from the early days of our relationship. That's exactly the balance they're struggling with, I agreed. Local roots, regional reach. For a moment, we were just two marketing professionals doing what we loved. The history between us temporarily suspended. Later that week, we presented to Westfield together. The chemistry we developed over years of marriage translated surprisingly well to a professional setting. We anticipated each other's points, seamlessly handing off segments of the presentation. Westfield signed with us the next day. As we celebrated with the team, champagne flowing in the conference room, Zoe pulled me aside. You two work well together, she observed cautiously. Professionally speaking, we always did, I admitted, when he wasn't undermining me. And now that you're his boss? I watched Daniel across the room, chatting with our creative team, fitting in despite the awkward circumstances of his hiring. Now he sees what I was capable of all along. The probationary period continued with similar successes. Daniel brought in 2 more significant clients, integrated well with the team, and never once tried to leverage our past relationship for special treatment. 3 months in, I found him working late, staring intently at his computer screen. Everything okay? I asked from his office doorway. He looked up, slightly startled. Just reviewing some analytics from the Harrison campaign. Their engagement is up 43% since we implemented the new strategy. I entered his office, sitting across from him. That's impressive. It's your approach that made the difference, he said, turning the screen so I could see. The personalized content strategy you developed for small businesses scales remarkably well. I never would have considered this approach at my previous positions. The acknowledgement hung between us, not just of my business success, but of the vision he had once dismissed. Why did you really come back, Daniel? The question had been brewing for months. He closed his laptop, considering his words carefully. When everything fell apart in Chicago, the job, Rachel, the life I thought I was building, I had a lot of time to think about what went wrong. Not just there, but before. With us. He leaned back in his chair. I watched you building this company from afar, saw your features in industry magazines, heard about your client successes, And I realized that the biggest mistake of my life wasn't losing the Collins account or trusting Rachel. It was not seeing what was right in front of me all along, which was that your vision was always bigger than mine, that what I called a hobby was actually the future. He gestured around him at the office that now employed 30 people. This future. I absorbed his words, searching for manipulation, but finding only regret. I didn't hire you for closure, I finally said. I hired you because you're good at what you do. I know, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. He hesitated. But if working together has provided some closure too, I wouldn't be sorry about that. I stood to leave, pausing at the door. The 6-month review is coming up. You should prepare a presentation on your contributions and goals going forward. I will. He nodded. Thank you, Claire. Not just for the job, but for showing me what's possible when someone believes in their vision, even when others don't. As I walked back to my office, I realized something had shifted. The weight of our past, his dismissal, my need to prove him wrong, had lightened. Not because I'd forgiven him necessarily, but because his presence in my successful company was vindication enough. Sometimes success isn't about getting even. It's about getting ahead on your own terms. The day of Daniel's 6-month review arrived with a sense of significance that extended beyond a standard employment evaluation. The boardroom felt charged as he presented his accomplishments. The clients secured, the strategies implemented, the revenue generated. In conclusion, he said, standing confidently before our executive team, I believe I've demonstrated both the skills and commitment to continue contributing to Prism's growth. The probationary period has given me invaluable insights into this company's unique approach, and I'm eager to continue applying and expanding on these principles. His presentation was polished, professional, and undeniably impressive. The Daniel standing before us was not the same man who had once mocked my ambitions from our bed. This version had been humbled, reshaped, and ultimately improved by witnessing the success that grew from the very seeds he had dismissed. Thank you, Daniel, I said after he finished. The team will discuss, and I'll have a decision for you by the end of the day. As he left the room, Zoe raised an eyebrow at me. Well, the decision had actually been made weeks ago. Daniel had proven himself not just competent, but valuable. He brought perspectives from larger agencies while embracing Prism's core philosophy of growing with our clients. His probation had been a success by any objective measure. We're keeping him, I confirmed, but with a restructuring of his role. Later that afternoon, I called Daniel into my office. He entered with the carefully neutral expression of someone preparing for any outcome. Please sit. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Before you tell me your decision, he said, I want you to know that regardless of the outcome, working here has changed how I view business, marketing, and... He paused. My own past judgments. I nodded, acknowledging his words. Your probationary period has been successful, Daniel. The clients you've brought in are thriving, and your integration with the team has been smoother than I anticipated. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. I've worked hard to earn my place here. That's why I'm offering you a permanent position as Director of Client Expansion. You'll focus on scaling our strategies for growing businesses, helping them transition from local to regional presence. His eyes widened slightly. That's perfect, actually. It combines what I learned at larger agencies with Prism's approach. Exactly. I slid a contract across the desk. The position reports directly to our new COO. You're promoting Zoe, he guessed correctly. Yes, as we continue to grow, I need her skills in that role. Daniel took the contract, scanning the terms. The salary is generous. Thank you. It reflects your value to the company, I said simply. We pay for talent here. As he signed the contract, a small smile played at the corners of his mouth. Do you ever think about how ironic this is? Me working for the company that started as the side hustle I criticized? Not ironic, I corrected. Poetic. After he left my office, I walked to the large windows overlooking the city. 5 years ago, I had been hunched over a laptop in our spare bedroom, designing websites while my husband told me I was wasting my time. Now I stood in the corner office of a company that employed 40 people, including that same husband. But this wasn't a story about revenge. It was never about making Daniel work for me to prove a point. It was about building something I believed in, despite those who couldn't see its potential. His presence in my company now was just an unexpected chapter in a story that had always been about my journey, not his criticism. That evening, as the office emptied, I found myself alone in the conference room, looking at the timeline of Prism's growth that decorated one wall. From my first small business client to our current portfolio of over 100 active accounts, each milestone represented a moment when I had chosen to believe in my vision. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. Celebration dinner? New COO's buying. I smiled, typing back, on my way. As I gathered my things, I passed Daniel's new office. Door open, light still on, head bent over work. Some things never changed, but others, the important ones, had transformed entirely. Good night, Daniel, I called as I passed. He looked up, offering a genuine smile. Good night, Claire. And congratulations on building all this. It's even more impressive from the inside. I nodded, accepting the compliment that felt like the final period on a sentence that had been waiting years to be completed. Outside, the evening air was crisp with possibility. Ahead of me waited dinner with friends who had become family, a company that continued to grow beyond my initial dreams, and a future entirely of my own making. The side hustle that had once been dismissed had become the main story. And what a story it had turned out to be. Sometimes the greatest success is simply proving your vision was right all along, not for those who doubted you, but for yourself. And sometimes the most satisfying part isn't hearing I was wrong, but knowing you were right. I'm Claire Morgan, founder and CEO of Prism Digital, and this is just the beginning.